So let's take a look now that the 2024 NBA draft is complete at the entire draft board here in the second round. We want to thank everybody, our NBA partners, for their work here. This has been really an incredible day, the first ever 2-day draft. But looking at this board, Bob, your biggest takeaway is what?
Well, I think what my biggest takeaway is we sometimes dismiss whatever the 50th pick is, but we forget the MVP of the league was picked in that range, Nikola Jokic. So there's a lot of names that even myself and maybe even the casual or more than casual viewer would say, I have no idea, I don't know how to pronounce that guy's name, but they could change the face of a franchise. And there's scouts and there's people within these front offices working tirelessly to make these selections. Like you said at the outset, there's been some second-round picks that have helped an organization win championships. Draymond Green being one of them. Manu Ginobili's another guy we didn't mention. So this second round, although sometimes people will say, well, the odds of hitting are low, and they are low, Malika. They are low as far as percentage-wise hitting. But if you get it right and you find a player in the second round, it can change your franchise.
There are more players coming from more parts of the world than ever before, and there are pipelines opening all over the world. You know, we are going to continue to see more players coming from the African continent. The coaching, the facilities, the academies, it has all been evolving in recent years, and you're seeing the result in the kind of players we are seeing come over. We've seen it in Europe. We've seen it in South America. And it is just a reminder of this game, how global this game is, and the challenges for American players to know that there are just players in every corner of this globe coming to play in the NBA.
And that's exactly where I was going. American-born players. And forgive me, being a black man, knowing how many players come from the inner city and what have you, you know, you think about what they're being taught in terms of how to play the game. We've got to keep our eyes on the coaching fraternity out there, whether it's high school, whether it's college, whether it's AAU, the list goes on and on. The kind of exposure they're getting in terms of who's teaching them how to play the game as it's presently constructed. These players from all over the world, these people can play. They can play. And when you see of all shape, color, and sizes, they can really, really ball. What are you doing back here in the States? The game began here. Mr. Naismith himself is here in the United States of America. What are you doing to make sure, as American-born players, you're learning what folks globally are doing to elevate the brand? The brand hasn't dissipated. It's elevated, and it's thriving and shining. The world has embraced this global iconic brand. And if American players ain't careful, they're going to get left behind, because all over this globe, we're seeing cats that can really play the game.
I thought Jay Billis made a really great point on our draft show yesterday when he mentioned that at some point in the United States, there's going to be a time where a coach says, all right, bigs over here, guards over there. That happens at almost every facility all over the country. And that doesn't happen necessarily in the same way in the global game. And so the skill set gets translated as opposed to sectioned off in a different way.
Well, and what's it going to take, right, to teach the game differently if that's what we're talking about? What's it going to take? Because Stephen A. talked about it. There are so many kids born in this country, in the United States, that aspire. This is their dream. We talk about dreams being realized.
Yeah, this is the American dream. If I'm 15,
if I'm any age playing basketball and I watch this draft, I might be sitting there going, oh boy. Every other player feels like they were not born in this. I don't know. We should look at the numbers. Was it of the 58?
Well,
how many were born?
particularly when you look at, if you take a look at the first round too, Adrian, when we saw French players being drafted in unprecedented ways, particularly at the top of the draft.
So nobody sees it more than Jonathan Givony. He travels the world. He's in these gymnasiums. He's in at these 15 and 16 and 17 and under tournaments in every corner of this planet. And seeing the growth and development, and it is taught differently and coached differently. That doesn't always mean better. There are so many great coaches in this country. You know, one part of this draft that I love, Donovan Clingan and I shared the same high school, Bristol Central High School.
How many graduating years apart?
35. Thanks for pointing that out. Thanks for pointing that out.
That was unnecessary.
We both did share a storied history on the freshman baseball team.
I think you could say remove storied and just say we both played baseball.
But what I love about his story is 4 years at a public high school. You don't see players of his stature stay at a public high school. Played for a coach named Tim Barrett. His fundamentals. Dan Hurley did a great job at UConn.
Yep.
And for high school players, you don't always have to move away and go to an academy or go to one of these prep basketball factories. There are so many great public high school coaches in this country, and players have migrated away from them. And just because you are on a big campus somewhere and someone's paying that coach a lot of money and you get to travel around the country, it doesn't mean you're playing for a better coach. And that's true in every corner of this nation.
What scares me about what Woj is saying is that I know of so many black kids that are listening to folks guide them to the very schools Woj just said you don't necessarily need to go to, pulling them and trying to peel them away from no public institutions. Because, you know, in other words, you can be impressionable. You got somebody that coming to you, they've got a reputable name or what have you. Come to this place, leave this city. We'll finance you. You're thinking about something that's going to elevate you to a point where you get yourself in a better position. And what Woj is saying is very important, because those might not be the people you need to listen to, but you don't know any better. You don't know any better when you don't have the right exposure.
There's so many pathways to the NBA.
Yeah.
There are so many feeder systems to it. This draft shows that. This particular draft shows that.
And you mentioned it. No one has seen that better than Jonathan Givony. All up over the place, and Bobby Marks. Bobby, Jonathan, I want to get your final thoughts here as we look at this draft class in totality.
Yeah, I think when you look at this draft right now, it's about the players that weren't drafted, and certainly Justin Edwards from Kentucky. Jonathan had him 10th best available going into today. It's a stark reminder. Fred VanVleet and Austin Reeves, two players who did not get drafted but found the right team in Houston and certainly with the Los Angeles Lakers. And not getting drafted, of course, it stings. Okay, it's an honor to get drafted, but it's not the only thing. It's about finding the right team, having the agent finding the right team, because once Summer League starts, the 58 players here and the players that get invited on two ways, they're all on an even playing field.
Bobby, I'm looking at the competing messages that the NBA sent last night. On one hand, the lottery picks 1 through 14, one of the youngest groups you've ever seen in NBA draft history. But then from 15 to 30, the oldest group we've seen since 2010. So, you know, what message are young players taking away from this? It's like Lucy pulling the football away from Charlie Brown.
Well, here's the thing. The teams that are drafting between 15 and 30, those are playoff teams.
Right.
Those are teams that are competing for a championship. So the teams that are competing for a championship are now getting better because they're getting the 3- and 4-year players. And I think that's why you see teams consistently are in the lottery year after year after year.
Yeah, I'd like to see the NBA give these kids a chance after the first round to pull their name out of the draft and go back to school, because there's no reason why we're seeing one-and-done freshmen going, deep into the second round, going undrafted. There's a better alternative now with NIL in college.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Let's just take a look at some of the headlines from this draft. Of course, we've mentioned the international flavor. An NBA record 3 international players coming from the same country in the top 5, of course, outside of the United States. And then UConn, Dan Hurley having 4 players drafted. That's the second most in a storied program history. And of course, Bronny James, what we suspected for weeks but was confirmed today. He was drafted 55th overall by the Los Angeles Lakers. And now we're going to see the first ever father-son duo in the NBA. 20 of the 58 picks were born outside of the United States, gentlemen, though. That's pretty incredible.
I'm on fire. It's EDA on the ESPN.